Tonight, we're talking about an event so strange and unexplained that it's inspired everyone from Spielberg to Shyamalan to whoever directed Critters. It's the original alien invasion story, known as the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter. On a hot summer night in August of 1955, 8 adults and 3 children burst through the doors of the quiet police station in the city of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Hopkinsville at the time had a population of about 25,000, and although it's the county seat of Christian County, Kentucky, Hopkinsville was by no means the kind of place where the local police expect to see much action past 11 p.m. on a Sunday night. That is, at least, until the goblins came. The tale that the disheveled group told officers in the station sounded too incredible to be true. They claimed that for the past 4 hours, they'd been engaged in a violent struggle with beings that defied explanation. 2 of the adults, Elmer Sutton and Billy Ray Taylor, said that their farmhouse had been besieged by an army of small, gray-skinned creatures with yellow, glowing eyes, who seemed intent on doing them harm. The story sounds hard to believe, but apparently the people telling it weren't. Police were convinced that something was really happening at the Sutton farm. Something so serious that they called for backup. Lots of backup. And so, the Hopkinsville police were joined by 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, and 4 military police officers from Fort Campbell Army Base to descend upon the Sutton family farmhouse in search of little gray men. But when they arrived, the creatures that had terrorized the family were nowhere to be found. There was, however, ample evidence that something had gone down on the farm that night. Windows were shattered, doors and walls were littered with bullet holes, and Billy Ray even pointed out a tuft of hair on the ground that he said was pulled from his own head by the creatures. In his interviews with police, Billy Ray told the story of how it all began. According to Billy Ray Taylor, he and his wife June were spending the evening with the Sutton family on their tobacco farm. Billy Ray and the oldest Sutton's son, Elmer Lucky Sutton, were lifelong friends with a brotherly bond. They'd spent some years traveling together, working as itinerant carnival workers. So I really want to give you a picture of our protagonists in this story. So Lucky and Billy Ray are besties. Along with their wives June and Vera, they live the carny life. The 4 of them as a family experiencing a life that was really unusual in the 1950s. I mean, this is a time where if you weren't equal on all 4 sides, totally quadrilateral, I mean square, you were nowhere. And not only did they live an unusual life, but they looked unusual too. Lucky, who was a total snack by the way, even had visible tattoos, including his nickname, Lucky, tattooed across his fingers. A fact that was cited often in articles that attempted to discredit his story. So we're talking about a cool crew who were no strangers to trouble, taking a break from their wild lifestyle to visit Lucky's family on their scenic Kentucky farm. So that evening, after dining with the Sutton family, Billy Ray decided to head out back and get some fresh water from the well. The moon was full and the sky was clear, so Billy Ray took his time as he moseyed over to the well. That was when he saw it. According to Billy Ray, a silvery flying object surrounded by iridescent light came silently towards the farmhouse from the southwest, about 30 to 40 feet overhead. It continued down the fields on a horizontal course, before slowing down and coming to a stop midair. As Billy watched, the object suddenly dropped straight to the ground, disappearing from sight into the 40-foot gully at the end of the field. Shaken by what he'd seen, Billy Ray ran back into the house and told the others. But everyone called bullshit because apparently Billy Ray had a habit of telling tall tales. So everyone was like, "Billy, you must have seen a shooting star." And no one investigated any further. But about a half hour later, around 8 p.m., the family dog started to bark aggressively in the backyard. Lucky and Billy Ray went to the back door and they saw the dog run and hide beneath the house. They looked out into the yard and saw that a strange glow was approaching the farmhouse from across the fields. As it came nearer, they could make out what seemed to be a small humanoid figure with glowing eyes. They described it as being about 3.5 feet tall, with a large and almost perfectly round head. Its arms were long, and its upper body was sturdy, with visible musculature, like this guy was jacked on top. But then its legs were really long and spindly and stick-like. It had large hands with webbed fingers and talon-like claws. It had triangular ears that were slightly floppy and wrinkled like leather. In later drawings done by the family, these ears kind of look like bat ears to me. And according to Billy Ray and Lucky, the creature was headed straight for the back door to the farmhouse. So, in true American fashion, confronted by the frightening unknown, they quickly grabbed guns and trained them on the back door, awaiting the creature's arrival. When it had nearly reached the back door, the men fired at it through the screen. The creature somersaulted backwards, then just scrambled upright and scurried away to the dark side of the house. The men joined the rest of the family in the living room, and as they told them what had just happened, another creature appeared at the window. Lucky Sutton's brother, J.C. Sutton, armed with a 20-gauge shotgun, fired at the creature through the screen. Again, the shot seemed to land, but the family couldn't be sure whether it had actually damaged the creature. The men agreed that there was only one way to find out, and they headed for the outdoors to check for the creature's corpse. Billy Ray took the lead, stepping out through the door first, and as he stood under the small overhanging roof, about to step out into the yard, everyone behind him in the hall saw a claw-like hand reach down and touch his hair. They screamed at him, but the creature took hold of Billy Ray's hair, and suddenly the Sutton family was playing tug-of-war with an unknown entity, trying to free Billy Ray from its grasp. Finally, they managed to tear him loose, though the creature tore out a handful of Billy's hair in the process. Lucky ran out into the yard and saw that the creature was still on the roof. He fired at it, blasting it off the roof overhanging the Suttons' door. The family then noticed another creature perched on a nearby tree limb, but when they tried shooting it down, the creature just leapt to the ground and disappeared like the others. Immediately, another one of the creatures, or perhaps the same one that had just been shot off the roof, came running at the men from the side of the house. Lucky fired his shotgun into the creature's head at point-blank range, and he said it made a sound like a shot hitting a metal bucket, and the creature flipped over, then got up and ran off into the darkness. When a direct blast from a 12-gauge shotgun had no effect, the men made an obvious decision. They would go back in the house and leave these things alone. The family gathered in the living room and tried to decide what to do next. At some point, they noticed that the creatures avoided the circle of light around the front and back porch lights. They concluded that this was not an attempt at concealment, but rather an indication that the creatures didn't like the light. According to the family, the creatures were able to move very quickly on all fours. Except for their yellow eyes, the creatures were the same color all over. In the dark, this was a phosphorescent silver. But when a light was turned on them, it changed to a dull metallic look. The body surface gave the witnesses the impression that it was skin and not metal or cloth. The glow surrounding the creatures' bodies would increase when they were shot at or shouted at. There was no visible hair, and they gave off no smell. Strangely, not a single witness could describe the creature's feet. Either they didn't have any, or they were too small to be noticed. The creatures made no noise at any time. The thin line across their faces that the family took for a mouth never actually opened, and the creatures made no sounds when moving, although the weeds and bushes rustled when the creatures fled into them. The only noise associated with the creatures was a slight scraping sound on the farmhouse's metal roof, as if the points of their talons were dragging lightly across it. Several times throughout the night, the family thought that they had driven the creatures off for good, only to have them return again. By the 6th time that the invulnerable visitors besieged the home, the children and June Taylor were in hysterics. By the time the family left for the Hopkinsville police station, the children were screaming with fear and had to be carried to the car. Hopkinsville's chief of police, Russell Greenwell, was on duty that night. Strangely, Greenwell was primed to believe a story like the Suttons, because he himself had seen a UFO. Just 2 years prior, in 1952, Greenwell witnessed a glowing oval object in the sky over the road he was driving on in broad daylight. Greenwell and dozens of other drivers stopped their cars to watch the craft, which hovered in place for 30 to 40 minutes before departing at a high speed. But Greenwell didn't just believe the Suttons because of his own experiences. He later said, "Something scared those people. Something beyond reason. Nothing ordinary. These aren't the kind of people who normally run to the police for help. When they feel themselves threatened, they reach for their guns." One of the investigators who rode to the farmhouse with Billy Ray Taylor observed the rapid pulse beat in his neck and timed it, noting that the rate was 140 beats per minute, twice the normal heart rate, which confirmed that Billy was scared of something. There's no timetable to settle the order in which all of the investigators arrived in Kelly, but cars and people, voices and tramping feet, headlights, flashlights, and guns converged rapidly on the farmhouse. The atmosphere was tense. Chief Greenwell said, "In and around the whole area, the house, the fields, that night, there was a weird feeling. Whatever the cause, the contagion of the Suttons' fear, the strangeness of their errand, or an actual sense that somewhere in the darkness beyond the farmhouse, non-human entities might be watching. Everyone's nerves were on edge. Someone stepped on a cat's tail and the cat yowled. Greenwell said, "You never saw so many pistols unholstered so fast in your life." Besides the bullet holes and shotgun shells that indicated the family had spent the night shooting at something, there was very little evidence of just what had been shot at. A group of investigators noticed that on an outer side of the fence, where one of the creatures was supposed to have been knocked to the ground by a shot, there was a strange, luminous patch, roughly 1.5 feet in diameter on the grass. The patch was visible only from one angle, standing a few feet away, but up close, nothing at all was visible. Aside from this mysterious luminous grass and a green glow several officers claimed to see from the woods, no evidence was found that night. Greenwell did surreptitiously search the home for signs that the family had been drinking, but aside from a few beer bottles in the trash, there was absolutely no hard liquor in the home at all. In fact, the family matriarch, Glennie Langford, Lucky's mother, forbid any spirits in her home, so there was no chance that the Suttons had been drinking at all. Eventually, the investigators all agreed to pack it up and return to the farmhouse in the morning to see if anything could be found by the light of day. By 2:15 a.m., the woods, fields, and yard were dark, and the Suttons were alone in the farmhouse again, and the little men came back. The most senior member of the family, Lucky Sutton's mother, Glennie Langford, had remained stoic through the earlier siege on her family's home. In fact, after the police had gone, she went to bed with hopes of sleeping off the fright the night had given her. The others followed suit, turning off the lights in the house and gathering in one room to try to get some rest. But soon after she settled into bed, Glennie Langford noticed a glow coming from the window right over her head. She looked up and saw one of the creatures peering in, clawed hands pressed to the screen as it stared at her. She called quietly to the rest of the family to come look. Lucky was on his feet at once, pointing a gun at the window. "I'm gonna shoot," he said. But Glennie said, "For God's sake, don't!" See, throughout the night, calm and self-possessed Glennie had made the most measured observations about the creature's behavior. It was Glennie who pointed out that they seemed to avoid the light. She also recalled to Isabel Davis, author of Close Encounters at Kelly, that the creatures always approached the house slowly, with their hands raised, as if they were trying to reassure their hosts or even communicate with them. Had she been able to control the situation, the shooting might have stopped. But despite his mother's protests, Lucky shot at the creature outside the window, blasting out the screen and causing the creature to go somersaulting away into the dark. Thus began the second siege of the Sutton farm by the little gray men. For the next 2 hours or so, the family fended off another incursion, shooting at the creatures whenever they caught sight of them. None of the shots fired injured the creatures any more than the earlier shots had. The last time that a creature was seen that night was about a half hour before sunrise, which took place around 5:15 that morning. The family was still awake when investigators returned to the farm. Police combed the fields and woods looking for traces of the little men or the spaceship, but once again they found nothing. They interviewed family members, including the young children present, and they did get the same story with all the same details as the night before. Chief Greenwell even tried tripping some of them up by mentioning the creature's small eyes or spacesuits, but he was always corrected. Chief Greenwell's officers weren't the only ones on the scene that day. They were joined at the time by Air Force officials and, eventually, reporters. Soon the investigators left again, but the reporters didn't. Following the incident, the family was besieged by another force: the media. TV, newspapers, and radio broadcasts were flooded with the story of the goblin invasion on a small Kentucky farm. And following the publicity came sightseers. As news spread, the crowds got thicker, cars jamming Old Madisonville Road to stare out into the fields where the little men hid that night. People trampled around the Sutton property, walked around their house, even opened doors and walked right in to ask questions or snap pictures. Those state troopers came through several times a day to clear people out. More kept coming. Glennie Langford published a plea in the local paper begging people not to come, but it did nothing. The family put up no trespassing signs, but they had no effect either. So they tried something else. Something that cost them a great deal of sympathy and turned their story into even more of a laughingstock to the general public. Signs went up around the family farm, replacing the no trespassing signs with signs charging 50 cents admission. The price was raised several times. At one point, the sign demanded 50 cents for admission, $1 for information, and $10 to take a picture. These signs seemed to confirm what most people believed. The family's claims were total bunk, and all of this was for profit. There was a good deal of righteous indignation, and the signs did nothing to keep people out, let alone compel them to pay. The Madisonville, Kentucky Messenger ran a headline: "Earthmen profit. See where the tub men landed. Only 50 cents per." Which, by the way, they called them the tub men because when Billy Ray was describing the craft he saw, he equated it to a tub model that was popular at the time that everyone knew what he was talking about when he said it. They were like, oh yeah, that tub, okay. Messenger also ran statements from 2 astronomers who claimed that creatures like the ones the family described could not exist in our solar system, and that the story told by the Suttons was entirely fabricated. Eventually, the Suttons grew reluctant to talk about what had happened that night. Assuming that anyone who asked was looking to ridicule them, the family refused all interviews, save for the one given by Glennie Langford a year after the incident to Isabel Davis. Other than the statements and illustrations of the creature taken by reporter Andrew Ledwith of station WHOP the day after the incident, the family has not told their story in full to any members of the press. To me, this seems to debunk the idea that they were in it for the publicity, though the admission signs are often cited by skeptics as proof that it was all a hoax. No help is the official Project Blue Book report, declassified in 1975. The report dismisses the Sutton story outright, citing the admission charge and the deluge of reporters and sightseers as proof that it was all a hoax. But Like many of the declassified documents from Project Blue Book, it's unclear if this short report is really all that was gathered from the incident at the Sutton farm. For days following the incident, Kelly-Hopkinsville locals claimed to have seen Air Force planes combing the airspace above the fields, where the object that was witnessed by Billy Ray Taylor was said to have landed. The search was not mentioned at all in the Project Blue Book documents released in 1975. Chief Greenwell and many other officers at the scene also confirmed that Air Force officers arrived to the investigation, but the documents don't mention that either. So what, then, do skeptics believe that the family saw that night, if anything at all? The explanations fall into two equally outlandish categories. On one hand, there is a claim that the family spent the night shooting at a pair of great horned owls that had nested nearby. The general idea is that great horned owls get overly aggressive when they're nesting, and the creatures reported by the family had ears that resemble the horned owl's feathered plumicorns that give it its name. And the owls also have large yellow eyes like the creature described. However, I think it's safe to say that owls don't glow, are not impervious to bullets, and would not waste their time peering through windows at sleeping old ladies. Plus, the family, who had lived in this area their entire lives, likely knew the difference between a big feathery owl and a leathery, hairless little man. So that brings us to the second commonly accepted explanation. Monkeys. Seriously. The theory goes that a circus might have passed through the area on their travels, likely crossed Hopkinsville on the day of the incident. The idea is that one truck containing monkeys must have gotten lost in town and failed to accompany the others westward on US 68. Instead, it turned north on US 41, and somewhere between Hopkinsville and Kelly, this truck must have stopped to let the monkeys out. For exercise? Who knows? But the theory goes that one or more of the monkeys got loose and found their way to the Sutton property, where they remained all night to get shot at and terrify the family until daybreak, when they decided to go somewhere else. Despite the fact that there's absolutely no evidence of monkeys escaping a circus or even being on the Sutton farm at all, no paw prints in the dirt, no fur, nothing, this, shockingly, is actually the only explanation cited in the Project Blue Book report. So the government wants you to believe it was monkeys. Other theories offered by skeptics, besides the obvious idea that it was all a hoax, was a group hallucination caused by tainted moonshine, or that the family mistook bioluminescent fungus on decaying trees for floating little men somehow. None of these really seem to add up to me, so I'd say that the story that the Suttons told was either totally real or totally fabricated. I just don't think that what they saw was just a case of mistaken identity. And the Suttons are not the only ones who have claimed to see creatures like this. For their documentary series Hellier, Greg and Dana Newkirk, along with Connor James Randall and Carl Pfeiffer, gather reports of goblin-like creatures seen throughout Kentucky and the surrounding states. What they uncover is that most of these sightings, including the siege on the Sutton farm, have taken place around a connected web of mines that stretch throughout several southern states. Locals interviewed in this documentary claim that these sightings are not rare in rural Kentucky, and the hunt for Kentucky's goblins leads the documentarians on an absolutely incredible trip through high strangeness, synchronicities, and it even uncovers connections between the Kelly-Hopkinsville case and the infamous ultra-terrestrial Indrid Cold. Seriously, if you like all things weird, Fortean, and bizarre in a way that makes you feel like one small cog in a vast and incredible universe, I really recommend Hellier. You can stream it on Amazon. I loved it. Also, speaking of synchronicities, on the 62nd anniversary of of the Kelly-Hopkinsville incident on August 21st, 2017, Hopkinsville was the epicenter of a rare celestial phenomenon. Now, you may remember the total solar eclipse of 2017 for the photo taken of our idiot baby apricot former president staring directly into it, like they literally tell you never to do, which, in retrospect, feels a little bit like a foreboding omen of how he would feel about some other health-related recommendations from scientists. But anyway, Hopkinsville was ground zero for that solar eclipse. Apparently, it was the point of the greatest total solar eclipse, and the town went completely dark for 2 minutes and 41 seconds. As far as I know, no little gray men returned that day, but I still find it very strange. Also, another fun Hopkinsville fact, infamous clairvoyant Edgar Cayce was from Hopkinsville. Born in 1877, Cayce claimed he could channel premonitions in his sleep, and is considered by some to be the inspiration behind the somnambulist Cesare in the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And full disclosure, I kind of experienced something that, in retrospect, reminds me of this case too. So, this was about 14 years ago, long before I knew about the encounter at Hopkinsville. So in Jersey, one of my absolute favorite things to do is to drive around on these unpaved fire lanes through Stoke State Forest. There's all these abandoned houses out there. It's creepy and secluded. There's crazy wildlife like bears and bobcats and porcupines that just wander out into the road. Anyway, I was out there one night many years ago with my ex-boyfriend. I'm not going to get into this too much, but just to paint you a picture, suffice to say, this kid was the kind of dude who would try to start a fight with someone at McDonald's because they looked at them funny, but when we stopped at these abandoned houses, he would stay in the car because he was too afraid. And this night, he happened to be driving. So we're on these secluded fire lanes in the middle of nowhere, probably at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because we would just drive all night. And we come around a bend and there's a field, and I tell him to stop because out in the field, I see 3 tiny figures. They were glowing blue in the middle of the field, and they were small but human-shaped, like maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, and they were across the field from where we were stopped. And I realized as I was watching them that they were coming closer, and I kept staring. And these 3 human-shaped glowing figures slowly began to make their way across the field towards our car. And I had the window down. I could feel the breeze on my face, and I could smell the woods out there, and these things were coming towards us. And they got halfway across the field, and my bitch-ass ex goes, "Fuck this," and floors the car. And he's driving my car, by the way, and he just starts speeding my freaking car on this dirt road, hitting every pothole on the way because he's so terrified that these things might be chasing us. But of course, they didn't chase us, and I was so disappointed because I really felt like something was about to happen, and I'll always wonder exactly what would have happened. And weirdly, years later, I would have another profound and strange experience in this area that's kind of extraterrestrial, but that's literally one of the most bizarre things that I've ever experienced, and I'm not going to tell you that story right now. I'm saving it for like when people actually watch this channel. So like, please share this video, because like I need 100 subscribers before I can even change my channel URL, which is just, don't even get me started. Now, I want to talk briefly about what I think that the creatures at Kelly-Hopkinsville actually were. Because my favorite thing about this story is that we don't know for sure. Obviously, there are some indications that these beings may have been extraterrestrial in origin, right? The craft that Billy saw, strange glowing, the seemingly biomechanical markers that scream of an alien technology. But what about ultra-terrestrial extraterrestrials. Ufologists like Jacques Vallée posit that unidentified flying objects and related events involve visitations from other realities or dimensions that coexist separately alongside our own. So perhaps the goblins that the Suttons saw didn't come from outer space, but from an alternate dimension, an explanation also favored for entities such as Mothman, Bigfoot, even the Loch Ness Monster. But my favorite stories are the ones with no answer at the end. Answers are comforting and consoling, and they give us a sense of control over what we fear, but the unknown leaves us treading in dark water, never knowing what lurks in the depths beneath. And that's all. Let me know what you think the goblins at Kelly-Hopkinsville were. Were they aliens? Were they ultra-terrestrials? Were they fae? Were they a group hallucination? And let me know what other things you'd like to hear me talk about. I really want to cover some more high strangeness topics. I also want to play some creepy ass games and terrify myself. But I thought I'd take a break tonight from trying to get possessed by demons because once again, I am home alone. However, the last two videos were terrifying to make, so I thought I'd do something a little bit fun. But next time, we're gonna dance with the devil again, I promise. Cool.